very good morning once again from the Sports Desk. Now, the Formula One 2022 campaign wraps up later today with Red Bull's Max Verstappen having already secured his second consecutive title. The Belgian Dutchman will start in pole position alongside his teammate Sergio Perez, who finished ahead of Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. Mercedes could not continue their Sao Paulo performance as Sir Lewis Hamilton will be starting behind Carlo Sainz Jr. in fifth spot with his teammate George Russell in sixth. For more on this, I'm joined by Lufefele Nkosi Maekiso, of course, who is Moto Zar TV founder, as well as Basho Bonke Chopsepuka, who is a South African racing champion. A very good morning to both of you gentlemen. Lufefe, you're in studio with me. Thank you very much for coming through. I know with everything that is happening on the Johannesburg roads with the 947 ride Joburg, thank you for being able to make it in here. And of course, Chops, thank you to you as well for joining us. Lufefe, I'm going to start with you. Qualifying in Abu Dhabi for this race, you would have expected, building on, as my intro says, from Sao Paulo, that coming into Abu Dhabi, Mercedes look like a team that are signaling their intentions now officially for next year. But fifth and sixth?
I heard that apparently they've set up their car for the race, which disadvantages them in qualifying. But looking at the 3 practice sessions, they were right up there with Ferrari and Red Bull in particular. So I'm still quietly optimistic about their chances today. As you can see, I'm on brand.
Chops, I mean, look, it's been a crazy season that we've seen so far. The kind of crazy season where we're about to see the 7-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton potentially not winning a single race this entire campaign. Do they look like a team, at least Mercedes, that won't make it onto the podium? And then secondly, does Sir Lewis Hamilton look like someone that actually might finish the season with that record of not winning a race?
Well, I think chances are he's got a strong team. I think we've seen it in Brazil. I just think their car has not really got the race pace to take on the likes of the Red Bull. I think the Red Bull is more switched on now again. They're on form and they're on pace. And they need to just make sure that Checo finishes second in the championship. But the real war now, if you take Red Bull out of the equation, is between Ferrari and Mercedes.
So we are looking at Red Bull, Ferrari, we are looking at Mercedes, of course, but there is a special focus here, that being the 4-time world champion, the man that did it all with Red Bull, you know, the team that has won this particular season, and that's Sebastian Vettel. Formula One is saying goodbye to Sebastian Vettel, is saying goodbye to one of the best drivers the sport has ever seen. And, you know, a lot of the drivers actually came out to bid him farewell at a dinner to show the love that the sport has for him. Just, I mean, Sebastian Vettel saying goodbye to Formula One.
Yeah, hey, it's the end of an era. Apparently, they racked up a bill of £140,000 for that dinner for just 20 drivers. And they're not allowed to consume alcohol, obviously, because it's race weekend. So I wonder what they were eating. But yeah, Vettel, it's sad to see him go. It's a little bit premature for me, but I feel as though, you know, with the lack of performance in his current team, Aston Martin, that's what's made him make the decision to say that he will be stepping down now. But as Sir Lewis said, maybe he'll be back.
Maybe he'll be back. I mean, we've seen the likes of Kevin Magnussen going, Nico Hulkenberg going, but coming back. Formula One is that thing where once you've bitten that cherry, you can't stop enjoying it. But something else outside of Sebastian Vettel, something else outside of Sir Lewis Hamilton and George Russell is Max Verstappen's attitude. Chops, I mean, the guy has come out and has just taken a good go at media to say that, he calls it sickening criticism of his attitude in Sao Paulo, where he didn't want to let his teammate, advance, as per the team orders. I mean, that's not the kind of attitude you'd expect to see from somebody that has already won the championship.
Absolutely not. I think, in all fairness, he's quite a charger. He's quite a bull in his own right. But he's missed a very fundamental thing here. If it went for Checo, he wouldn't be champion. He'd be champion only this season. So you'd have one championship under his belt. Because Checo managed last year to hold Lewis back for 10 seconds, which then Max Verstappen had the opportunity to claw back. So say he didn't hold him for those 10 seconds. What would have actually happened is that the safety car could have come in, Lewis could put in tires, and he could have won his 8th title with no problems. So I think it's a question of the tail wagging the dog, yeah. So Red Bull needs to mean, and I think because they have this blue-eyed boy, he seems to be a guy that's untouchable. But there's a point in time. He's like every racing driver. Situation is going to turn around, and it's going to humble him very quickly.
It definitely might humble him quite badly, in fact, given the kind of bad publicity that he's received since last year. But Lufefe, do you think we're ever going to see a season like this? You know, a season where it looked like Ferrari was back, you know? Red Bull then was like, no, you're not back, Ferrari. Mercedes with the W13 was just not there, period. You had Mr. Consistency in George Russell, despite the challenges of Ferrari. You had, you know, Kevin Magnussen coming through and looking like there is actually life in a Haas car, even though Mick Schumacher's not doing anything there. Then you've got the movements that have happened so far. Daniel Ricciardo seemingly going back to Red Bull as the 3rd driver. You've got, you know, Pierre Gasly as well making the moves. Are we ever going to see a season as crazy as this?
It has been a crazy season, but I don't think it's the first time that we've seen what they call silly season in an F1 season. Ferrari, they need to go back to the drawing board. Yeah. I want to start with them. I think if they learn their lessons, then what has happened this year, they will build on that next season, because they definitely have a car that can be competitive enough to fight for the championship. Congratulations to George Russell. We didn't get an opportunity to say that.
Yeah.
Well done to him on his first win last week. Excellent, excellent drive. Looked in control. It never looked in doubt. Mercedes, they've clawed their way back. I think they're probably 2 or 3 tenths behind the leading teams now. So I'm sure during the winter break, they'll be working to close that gap even further.
We saw in 2016 Chops, you know, Rosberg winning the championship. I don't think anybody expected to see that when Sir Lewis Hamilton was probably at his greatest, you know, as a racing driver. Can we see George Russell doing the same thing next year? Because everybody's still waiting for that 8th record-breaking title from Sir Lewis Hamilton. But George Russell, Mr. Consistent, I call him, looks like somebody that knows how to win races and could potentially, with a good car, might know how to win a championship.
It's going to be a tough one next year, because I believe with the downtime, they've got 45% downtime on the wind tunnel. That is Red Bull, to say the least. So there's going to be a lot of competitivity between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. And Mercedes is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And if out of the blocks, George is able to beat Lewis, the team is going to gradually gravitate towards George as the young charger, so on and so forth. But it's very important for Lewis to get his 8th title, is to be as aggressive as he can. And there's no place for second fiddle in the team. He just needs to take the charge and ensure that he's as brazen as he can to ensure that he clinches his 8th title. But it's not going to come out with no fights. Red Bull is good, strong, but not as strong as this year. That much I can say.
He mentions a good point, does Chops, Lufefe, to say it's important for Sir Lewis Hamilton to win this 8th title. And I think if I may be interpreting what he's saying, it's important for representation in a sport that is still struggling with transformation, to get a black man to be the most successful in a sport that is predominantly white, has been predominantly white forever. We know he said it with his chest, Benny Ecclestone, that this man cannot win an 8th title because he will be erasing Michael Schumacher's legacy. To add on to that, from your point of view, how important is it for Sir Lewis Hamilton to get that 8th title, knowing very well that George Russell has shown that he knows how to drive?
You know, what Lewis has done in F1 and what he continues to do, I think we'll only appreciate in the future, maybe like 10 years from now, because he's making history. He is paving the way for the future, because there's a lot of young, aspiring F1 drivers of black skin color who would love to see themselves at that level of Formula One. So Lewis is then now instilling that belief that it is possible.
Yeah.
So I think what Chops is saying is it's very, very important. And there's no doubt in my mind that it will happen.
We can only but hope that he gets that 8th world title, because from a black representative point of view, it is incredible for transformation. Right. You guys, I usually ask you guys for predictions, and I ask for the podium. I don't care for the podium today. I want to ask you simply, Chops, who's winning today's race?
We're hoping for Checo for the sake of what, the guy, I really respect what he's done. And it's not easy to be a racing driver of that caliber in a team like that, where all guns are pointing at you and you're never able to deliver. I think it's very important for him. He's done quite a lot for the team. And to recognize him for what he's done through the season, he's got to try and take this one. He's got to be very stronger than Max, to say the least, because so as much as I'd like Lewis to win on a high, I think Checo really deserves a win to clinch second in the championship.
Who's winning today's race? Taking away, not minding what you're wearing.
No, Fede. But that tension between the Red Bull drivers, I'm banking on that. Yeah. So I will say the favorite is Max, naturally. But we may be in for a surprise, because they may say that they're fine in the media, but we should know better than that.
Of course. We see this in sport all over the place, of course.
Yes. So Leclerc even has a chance as well, because he's going for the second in the championship, and he's currently second.
Most definitely. Well, we can only but wait and see exactly what's going to be happening in Abu Dhabi today. It is the season finale of the 2022 Formula One season, of course. Max Verstappen and his teammate Sergio Perez are sitting in the front row. We've got Ferrari's Charles Leclerc and Carlo Sainz Jr. in the second row, and the Mercedes duo of Sir Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in the third row. We are also bidding farewell to Sebastian Vettel from Formula One, at least according to Sir Lewis Hamilton, for now. But that's where we leave it from the sports desk. Thank you very much to Motors R founder, of course, and our resident analyst, Lufefele Nkosi, as well as South African racing champion, Bashobonke Chops Sipuka, for joining us, of course, here today to talk about all things Formula One. We take a